The scrutiny of Elon Musk continues today as he moves forward with acquiring Twitter. All of it. The U.S. does not regulate big tech very much, but Europe has been taking the lead with more rules and requirements, and now regulators over there are stressing that Musk will still have to follow content laws of those places, even if the company is off the public market here in the U.S. There are signs some users bailed on Twitter in response to Musk buying it, and now a judge just rejected Musk's effort to scrap a settlement with financial regulators requiring that he would have to get approval from Tesla for company-related tweets. Now, that timing is coincidental. The case has been going for a while. But it's interesting. Musk was caught using Twitter to rush out the kind of business claims that would have been stopped had he made the same claims in financial filings. He was busted for pushing misleading information. And that was just as a Twitter user, not an owner. Traded companies are more regulated than private ones, which is what Twitter's about to be. And critics are asking, if Musk was already breaking those rules then, what will he do with fewer rules and the added secrecy he gets by owning Twitter outright? And then there's how the company can be used to protect or advance Musk's massive wealth. You know, 2 decades ago, he was musing on the perks of wealth as well as considering his own values.
Wow, I can't believe it's actually here. It's pretty wild, man. Just 3 years ago, I was showering at the Y and sleeping on the office floor. And now, obviously, I've got a $1 million car.
My values may have changed, but I'm not consciously aware of my values having changed.
Now he's a billionaire staking his career on convincing people that he has plans for Twitter that are now suddenly not about for-profit goals. That's why he talks so much about free speech lately. But he's also signaling which team he currently backs. It's not just free speech in the abstract. He's publicly courting a right-wing partisan constituency in the U.S., at least for now. Just yesterday, he amplified an account linked to the Pizzagate conspiracy. Of the billions of options of tweets ever, that's really one to lean into right now. Now, Congress has not caught up to regulating big tech. This is a field that's less regulated than traditional media companies or industries like banking. Some politicians in D.C. seem at times just out of the loop about this. Some just root on big business and say, let them make all the calls. In fact, it's pretty rare to find U.S. officials who confront this powerful and, sure, sometimes confusing field head on, although there are a few.
Giant corporations pose another problem. They can exercise more political influence. Mark Zuckerberg gets to have a private dinner with the president. Small business owners don't get that kind of access.
Elon Musk's potential Twitter takeover is causing shockwaves, while Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren called it dangerous for our democracy.
Elon Musk, you made $1 bazillion. Good for you. The rest of us invested in all the things that were necessary to have a foundation so that you could do that.
That is a fair point. We are living in a world that celebrates so much technology and so much wealth and capitalism. And those of us who use this stuff, which is most of us in the Western world, recognize it has its value. That's precisely why it is important to figure out what the rules should be. Water has value too, and that's something we regulate. You can't just charge anything for it or turn it on and off because a billionaire said so. And right now, just saying that is apparently somewhat controversial, at least on some corners of the internet and certainly over in right-wing media. We're joined now by Democratic Senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren. Welcome. You have warned about the growing power of big tech. What do you see in Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter?
I see that we need to make 2 big changes. The first one is we need a wealth tax in America. And let's talk about how Elon's purchase here was subsidized by tens of millions of people who've paid their taxes every year. And the second part is we need rules of the road for big tech. But ultimately, what all this boils down to is power. Who's going to have the power in our country? Are we going to make these decisions as a democracy, or is this going to be Elon Musk all by himself, off in a room, a bazillionaire who just plays by his own set of rules? That's really what's at stake here.
Is there something Congress could do to regulate the control of these companies. And I mentioned briefly comparing it to utilities. Are there aspects of certain social media companies that operate at a level where there should be a different form of regulation, or do you think it's generally fine right now?
No, we need rules of the road. And look, there are going to be rules. Like I said, the only question is, will Elon Musk decide all the rules by himself in a dark room, or is it going to be the case that we're going to decide this as a country? We're going to make rules in a democracy. And let me just give you an idea behind one of them. These big platforms create what are known as platform effects that just lock people in. So if I want to use my telephone, I can call you, I can call somebody else, regardless of what telephone company they use. Not so with a platform like Twitter. The only way that I can communicate with all kinds of people that I communicate with right now is I have to be on Twitter and run that communication through Twitter. Same for people who want to communicate with me. And that's true multiplied millions of times across that platform. So one of the things we need is we need rules, so that you can leave the Twitter platform and go to a competitor's platform and still be able to reach each other. You have rules like that, then you actually have some competition. And once you've got some competition, then we can start making decisions. Maybe I would like to go to a website that offers more privacy, or one that has moderated content. Maybe I don't want to hear some of that stuff. But I can get that if we've got a competitive industry. Right now, what we've got in tech is we don't have that kind of competition. Rules of the road could help facilitate that kind of competition and, frankly, break the stranglehold of someone like Elon Musk coming in and just owning the whole thing.
The politics of this have come at us pretty fast. I don't know if several years ago it would have been obvious that a certain billionaire from a certain country would somehow be so embraced by American conservatives. There's a headline here, LA Times, conservatives ecstatic that Musk bought Twitter. Republicans, quote, see themselves starting with their de facto leader, former President Trump, as unfairly targeted by Twitter's content moderation efforts. Do you agree with that view? Do you think it is clear that Elon Musk will be pro-conservatives or Republican Party in the United States, or do you think that's a misreading of him?
You know, for me, that's frankly not the most interesting question. I mean, it's he could be one way or the other, and it would still be wrong. The problem is one of power and concentrated power. It's about one person making all of the decisions about how tens of millions of people will have an opportunity to communicate with each other. That's where the problem is.
And finally on this, and then I want to turn to student debt.
Sure.
What do you say to the critique where people say, okay, any given person disagrees or doesn't like with what he's doing, but this is the free market. He's allowed to take the company private. What do you say to that? Do you think at the end of the day, this is still just his call and allowed?
Again, the point is one of what this tech space looks like. This is not like buying some company that produces cars or some company that produces soap. This is about buying a platform for communication among millions of people. And when that happens in newspapers, when it happens on television, when it happens in all kinds of other forms, telephones, we write as a democracy, as a country, our representatives, we write a set of rules of the road so that people have access. And they have access, I want to be clear here, regardless of their political point of view, they get access. The platforms, the tech platforms, have created something that is different. And right now, it is just basically unregulated. It's just out there for Elon Musk to make up the rules. And that's why it is that we need to step in and say platforms like this need rules of the road on communication, and so that there will be competition with other platforms.
Right. And as you say, if it's all down to one person, something that big, it's your trust or belief in that person will only go as far as how long they're like that. They might change.